He mentioned my background. I came out of the women's community. I was the NARAL's executive director for 7 years, and when I went into the legislature, was immediately elected chair of the pro-choice caucus, and have worked with my colleagues, both male and female, for my entire career in the House, trying to protect and defend women's reproductive rights. And one of the things that is a frame for me that I try to remind folks, because the debate, as Sam sort of framed up for you, is getting much more contentious. It's getting a lot more personal. It's getting a lot more basic than even, I mean, when I was first starting at NARAL, we were fighting some of the same fights we're fighting now, but really in the margins. These questions that are sometimes even difficult for our pro-choice supporters to answer is, you know, you can't legislate good family communication, so what role do you have as the state in being involved in decisions that minors want to make about their reproductive health, whether it's birth control or choosing a safe and legal abortion, and the intersection of where you want parents to be involved, but yet you also want young people not to have their entire fate decided by parents that might not have the same values as them. So these tough issues around the margins we were fighting a decade ago or 15 years ago, and now we're actually having a conversation again at the state capitol and at the Capitol in Washington about whether or not birth control is basic health care for women. And it's unreal that it's 2012 and I'm standing in front of you and these are the conversations that we're having. It's unreal to me that we're fighting as a state through our Attorney General the Affordable Care Act, which one of the best things for women that came out of that national health care reform is that for decades insurance companies have been able to charge what they call the reproductive years premium. So they charge us ladies in our reproductive years 1.5 times, 1.5 times what they charge men for their insurance because of what they know are going to be the costs associated with our, reproductive years. It's just unfair, it's discriminatory. And yet we're sitting around a state capitol and a national capitol asking ourselves, do we care? Do we care if healthcare is unfair for women in America and for women in Michigan? Do we care that women pay 68% more out of pocket than their male counterparts do for healthcare? Most of that is attributable to the fact that our insurance companies don't cover birth control in the same way that they would cover everything from your allergy pills to Viagra. Women's birth control usually is uncovered or has a much higher copay than what any other prescription does. So it's been a fascinating journey, and I want to leave you with a couple of themes. So I want you to start thinking about. We have to stop being so nice. Us on the progressive side of the spectrum, where we tend to be very thoughtful people who want to consider lots of different opinions and lots of reasons and ways that people came to be where they are in the spectrum of issues. And I've sat at many evening meetings and many cocktail parties, and I've listened to folks on the right of this issue who think they should have the right to decide for me and my sister and my best girlfriends and my family members whether they should have access to adequate family planning, whether they should have access to comprehensive sexuality education in schools, whether we should have our birth control or be able to choose a safe and legal abortion if that's the choice that we want to make. Those people in those meetings and cocktail parties that think they should have the right to make that decision for me are not shy. They're not shy. They will stand up and they will tell you why they feel like they have that right to make that decision for us, and it's usually based on some religious or moral or ethical reason that makes sense to them. But this is America. And the reason that we have separation of church and state is that a lot of us in this room, if you took a poll, there are probably a lot of people of faith in this room that have a lot of different beliefs. I'm a minister's daughter. I come to my pro-choice beliefs because of my religion, not in spite of it. And so for people to sort of hide behind this idea that it's their it's their morality, it's their religion, and they should impose that on all of us who don't have the same beliefs is a real problem. And in those same evening meetings and cocktail parties and different events that I've been at, I watched some of the most passionate pro-choice people that I know sit quiet. Or maybe say, oh, I don't know, I don't agree. But we haven't been as forthright in claiming these issues for our values, these issues are everybody's issues. They're not just women's issues. It matters to all of us as families if women don't have the health care they need. It matters to all of us as Michiganders when we talk about issues like pay equity. Michigan is 49th in the nation in terms of pay equity. White women in Michigan make so much less than their male counterparts, and women of color, you're even worse. And that we accept that in 2012 is unreal. And that we have elected members of the Michigan legislature. There's one that's serving right now that, every year for Pay Equity Day. Does everybody know what Pay Equity Day is? It's the day in this calendar year that women have to work to make what their male counterparts made in the calendar year that ended before it. So it usually happens in not too far from now, late April. Every year we introduce bills and resolutions, and we encourage the legislature to focus on these issues and to pay attention to the fact that everybody suffers in our economy when women don't get paid an adequate and fair wage for the work that they do, because it's less money that they have to pay their bills, it's less money that they have to buy their children new boots or to get the health care that they need. And so a couple of years ago we said, all right, we're gonna do something a little bit different. We're going to introduce in this package of bills a study commission. A commission to actually look at, so we have facts and figures that aren't just, our gut feeling, aren't just the things that we witness from, anecdotal conversations with other people, that we have facts and figures from the Bureau of Labor, from our own state labor agencies that show that women are making so much less than their male counterparts for comparable work. Let's just put together a commission and study it and figure out why. Because if we knew why, we could address it. And I thought to myself, of all the bills that we've ever introduced before, the bills that mandate equal pay or that punish employers who don't pay women equal, I thought, who in the world would stand up and oppose, who would vote against a commission to study why women make less than men? I found out pretty quickly who it was. And that person's still serving in the state legislature. And the message that he stood up on the House floor and delivered was, not is it right or wrong, not, women earn less because they, don't work as hard or they deserve less or anything like that. His message was, businesses would go broke if they had to pay women the same that they pay men for the same work. That's his quote. You can look it up in the House Journal. It literally was, women, we are, the low-wage labor that is keeping things going in Michigan, because if we paid you what you were worth, we'd all go broke. So this is the atmosphere that we're working in Michigan, and this is what we need to change. And so please don't be shy when you walk out of this room. Don't sit quiet when you have a family gathering or you have people together and they start talking about these issues. Challenge them, challenge their beliefs, because we've watched other progressive issues go far beyond, I think, the advances that we've had in women's rights. And I have lots of great friends who work in civil rights and civil liberties, especially for our LGBT community. And we've watched the advancement of some of the rights for our friends in the LGBT community. And one of the things that is really striking to me is that people, it's really hard to hold on to prejudice when you know people. When you've put yourself in their shoes and you know what kind of life experience they have. And almost everybody in the Capitol, when we talk about some of these issues, will say, oh, well, I have a family member who's gay, or I have a friend that I went to college with. But when it comes to issues of choice and women's reproductive rights, we let them shame us. We let them keep this an issue that we don't talk about. And so when women think that they're nervous, that their birth control might have failed, when something happens to them, God forbid, a sexual assault, getting access to emergency contraception, people don't want to talk about it. If women have made the choice to have a safe and legal abortion because it was morally the absolute right thing for them to do. It's an interesting statistic in Michigan right now. The other side sometimes will characterize women who make the decision to terminate a pregnancy as frivolous or flighty or as morally lacking. when you look at the statistics in Michigan about the women who are having terminations, the biggest group are women in their 30s who already have another child. So these are women who know what it takes financially, emotionally, physically to raise a family. They are looking at their life and saying, I don't have what it takes to add another child to this family right now. And for some women, it's the toughest decision that they make, and it's the morally right thing to do. And part of our mission at NARAL, and I try to keep this kind of in front of me a lot as I think about fighting for women's rights at the Michigan legislature. The mission is to fight for reproductive rights for all of the reproductive choices that women make. Preventing an unintended pregnancy, making sure we have good sexuality education and making sure we have good access to family planning. Bearing a healthy child. We don't do enough to make sure that women have all the care that they need if they want to, when they're ready to become parents and want to raise a healthy baby, healthy outcomes for mom and baby. The choice that's right for her. And until we have more people in our community fighting for all three of those things, until we have more people sitting in the state legislature that are willing to stand up on the House or Senate floor and say, this is important to a lot of people. This is the most important thing, the most personal, private thing. And government should really get out of the way and let doctors and women make their decisions with their partners and their clergy about what's right for them and not have that dictated to them by someone who doesn't share their values. So I'm getting the sign that I'm running long on time. I told you I was a good talker. So I will close with, really to me, I see an opportunity right now in Michigan. It's a very challenging place, but sometimes the challenge becomes the chrysalis for the amazing opportunity that is ahead. And we have a chance right now in Michigan to send a whole different group of people to the state capitol. We have a chance to send people to Washington, to Congress on our behalf. We have a chance to make a decision in a presidential election and to elect state Supreme Court judges who will have the opportunity to make decisions about these things. Get educated, know the issues, don't be quiet, and vote for people that share our values. We need it more than ever. Thank you. And I'm a little bit tight on time, but I'm happy to take a couple of questions if folks have them before you start your conversation. Go ahead.
You're from Arbor, we're in East Lansing. I can get a sense of where you might all be going, but what are you hearing from outstate? How are women outstate dealing with this, beginning as upset as some of the areas?
They absolutely are, and in some ways I think it's one of the benefits of when people go too far and they don't realize that they've stepped over the line. We as women we're 51% of Michigan's population. We're an even bigger percentage of that than that of the voting population in Michigan. And because they've made this issue, this sort of war on women, so personal as to get in the middle of us and our birth control, I think they've poked this giant sort of slumbering bear that has been, there's so many women that didn't vote in 2010. When you look at who voted in 2008 and who voted in 2010, there were a lot of women who stayed home in 2010. And I think everywhere I go in the state right now, there are a whole lot of women of every age who are saying, these people are crazy for some of the decisions they're making. I mean, seriously, there's some of these decisions they're making and the things that they're saying are irrational and crazy. And I think it's very beneficial to us in some ways that they've gone so far. As long as we can motivate enough people that we can stop them, in some ways I think we can benefit from them having way overstepped themselves on this.
I just wanted to say thank you for stepping up and being a woman who's taking a leadership role. One of the critical things right now is we don't have enough women at the tables standing up for us, and it takes a lot to do that, and I appreciate your being willing to be a representative.
I appreciate that. Thanks.
How many anti-choice bills are there in the legislature, if you had to approximate that?
Oh my gosh, it's 40. There's almost 40 right now, but it is interesting. So I said, I wander because I have too many thoughts in my head. But as I said, so some of these things we've seen year and year and year after another, and they fall in these themes of trying to regulate clinics out of business by putting ridiculous restrictions on what they have to look like and how wide the doors have to be and whether they have to be surgical centers even if they're just birth control clinics, and then so you've got these clinic regulation type bills. You've got procedure ban bills that, and Michigan's passing them and introducing them as early as 9 to 12 weeks in pregnancy. We'd be banning procedures if some of these bills went forward. So you've got those kinds of bans. Then you've got things, insurance bans that you couldn't have a termination paid for by insurance unless you bought a separate rider. Only nobody in Michigan would ever sell a separate rider, and who would buy a separate rider? You would, wouldn't know that you need that. But this year they've gone somewhere completely different, so it's kind of exciting in a way. It's some new stuff for us, Mary, right, to fight. It's a little bit different than what we were used to fighting, but it's so ridiculous. It's things like if OBGYNs have one of the highest medical malpractice rates of any kind of doctor just because of the high rate of concerns that people have about safe labor and delivery. They introduced legislation that said you'd have to, on top of your regular malpractice, have $1 million rider if you perform abortions. So, just targeted at specific, providers. And we have now the personhood amendment. Michigan's never had this before. They introduced a constitutional amendment to define personhood beginning at conception, which would make abortion illegal in violation of our, of Roe v. Wade and our acceptance as Americans of what our rights are. But also, most hormonal birth control would also be illegal under that. There's a lot of bills, and they're very, very far-reaching, and some of them really are getting a lot of attention. So, well, with that, I'm going to turn you over to your conversation. I'm going to go talk about personal property tax.